Hello and welcome to the next episode. Now we are going to talk about trade, resources, and everything connected to this. Now, at the end of last episode, we had a look at the prices and trade screen here. So each province is part of a so-called sector. A sector is basically within my empire parts of my empire which are in certain trade nodes. For example, we have a sector here which is part of the Arabian Peninsula, which is, for example, Sana. But we also have Aden here, which is part of the Red Sea trade node, which makes its own sector here. In these sectors, we can trade with the provinces in between. So, for example, Sana can buy goods from the provinces next to it and in our realm here. But it can also, when it has a center of trade, which are visible in the trade map modes, for example here, dominant center of trade, when it has certain centers of trade, it can connect to other sectors, which is basically to Aden here. And then these two can trade with each other and exchange goods. And all of this leads to a dynamic system where goods are traded between these sectors within a realm, but also between empires and nations. Now, looking at Sana itself again, we do have the list of potential goods we have in our realm. Or rather, that's all of the goods there are in the global economy. So we do have, I don't know how many there are. We could count them now, but basically you have from food to timber to military to knowledge, you have all kind of goods which are connected in a certain degree to each other. So, for example, to produce military goods, you need raw materials and timber to produce them, which is an urban good, military. And military, on the other hand, will then be used to actually field your manpower and your armies. The more advanced your armies are, like the more cannons you field, the more military goods you actually need, which will drive up your prices in the background. So, for example, the upkeep we pay on our fleets and our military units here are directly connected to the prices of the goods. So in the background, we calculate, okay, you have manpower, you have armies, and you have a lot of cannons in these armies, like what kind of amount. Then you need these kinds of amount of military goods, food, and whatever. And for the navy, of course, a lot of navy goods and timber goods to feed the ships and repair them. And therefore, you have a constant demand from your population, but also from your military, which will be necessary to feed. And each province here has its industries, as explained last time, which will produce certain things. For example, the marble industry, as we pointed out, produces raw materials and luxury products and requires timber for that. So from somewhere, Sana has to get timber to produce, to keep this mining industry running. And therefore, you will have dynamic prices depending on how well your market is fed with these goods or how rare they are in your realm. For example, here, what we can see currently is that the food price with 3.31 per unit is going down because apparently we have a certain small overabundance of food currently. But on the other hand, fiber, for example, which is also used for military, but also for population to make clothes, are going up slightly. However, on the other hand, for example, the luxury products at a price of 40.292 is almost going down by 1 ducat per year in price, which means there is currently either an overproduction or a lack of demand to satisfy this product. So it's going down in price until the market stabilizes again on a new equilibrium, or we get a new demand opened up somewhere. And what you want to keep an eye on is basically that your industries can produce at a profit, which also means that you maybe need to open up new markets. For example, here in Yemen, we always have a shortage of food, which we, for example, can get from Egypt here. So we could check, for example, the prices of food here in Egypt and Cairo. And the price for food here is basically the same as in Yemen currently, 3.34. But for example, the luxury price is lower there. So maybe because the luxuries are cheaper in Egypt, it's also driving down our price because we are no longer really in the game here. But on the other hand, for example, if we go to more remote location, so Yemen and Egypt are of course very connected to the global economy. But if we go, for example, into the north here, let's say into Scandinavia here, and look at prices here, we can see that, for example, here luxury is at 40 and is going up slightly. But also the exotic goods are at 32. Let's check something else again. Let's, for example, go here into West Africa. What we can see here is that the food price is actually at 6, almost double the price in compared to Egypt, while the luxuries are roughly the same in pricing. And therefore, each market and each area and each trade node and each sector in these trade nodes can have different prices and therefore lead to price differences which your burgers and your commerce industry wants to work on. And that's generating value. In this case, for me as Yemen, a lot of value because we can trade on the global economy, trade, for example, salt to China, which has a high salt price, buy it from this region, export it to China. On the other hand, we can buy exotic goods in the Philippines, sell it to Egypt, and therefore make a fortune from there. Now, all of this is, of course, on the first experience quite a lot, let's say, but in the first days when you start up the mod, basically, you get an event, which we can trigger here, which is called the Investment Manager. This one can automatically invest into your provinces to a certain degree, and therefore take care to a certain degree of investments and building up industries in your realm. Over time, you might want to learn a bit more about your provinces and maybe open up a new industry, which you also can. So for example, if we take this province here, and we do have forestries here, everything is opened up already. Let's check here. Yeah, their forestries are not opened. So we could take this province here. We can select province with the button here. We get a red pin. And then we could, for example, automatically by hand, not by hand, let the system open up something in the background. You don't need to do this, but you could basically do it. If you really want to micromanage your economy, then you can do it, but you don't need to. You can also just play around with the stuff already present, let the automatic investor handle certain things, and just keep everything going, conquer whatever you like, and sometimes look at your economy if you really want to. And that's why a lot of mechanics are handled in the background automatically, but you can do things by hand if you really want to. You could even set taxations by hand if you really want to, by delegating the tax code here. Then you could say, for example, do yearly event disabled, redelegation automatic. So you could do this like, okay, I don't want to have it automatic. I want to have events every year to see what my taxation looks like. You could do this, but you don't need to. You can just keep it automated, which is most of the time what you want to do. And yeah, from here on, basically, you can derive what you maybe want to do. And you can also use the special features here of special map modes. Some of the interesting map modes are on a quick menu here, down here. So feel free to check them out. But basically, let's check out the exotic prices here. And if you go to the special map mode here, what you can see here now is the global distribution of prices. Ignore the red ones here, which are uncolonized provinces, so they have a high price. But basically, you can see here that, for example, Europe here has prices in the range of 25 to 30, while down here the prices for exotics are around 7 to 10 in Africa. And here it's in the middle ground, basically meaning that if you can somehow get your hands on cheap exotics here in Africa, you can make a fortune by selling them in Europe, which basically means you have to colonize and you have to be a trade empire. But the same can be done to, for example, if we were to, let's change our map mode type to Europe here, for example. And then we do timber. Yes. So we have to reload this map mode. Now we only see Europe, for example. And now we can see how the timber prices differ in Europe itself. So for example, the highest prices are here in Florence and in the lowlands of Flanders here. While the cheapest prices for timber are obviously in the Northern Europe, forested areas of Scandinavia and Northern Russia here. So you basically want to connect somehow these regions, for example, as Denmark, to provide cheap forest timber goods to the Netherlands and therefore make a fortune from trade. And these things you can do and check out for different things. For example, we could check out luxury goods here. You can see that the luxury prices are lowest in Italy, where the production is high, and highest in Scandinavia, where you don't have any kind of urbanization yet. And the same goes for all the goods you want. Naval is probably also something very interesting. You can see here that the price in Iberia, Spain are extremely high and relatively low in the Horde territory here because they don't need ships, but also relatively high here in Eastern Europe because they don't really have navies. So every state that has some kind of state navy has high prices for naval materials, and all these which do not have a navy probably have low prices. But on the other hand also don't produce much. And that way you can use these kind of trade modes to identify stuff you maybe want to produce or maybe what you want to conquer to get economic potentials in the future. And that's one of the key features where you want to interact with your provinces and check out what you actually have, what they are doing, and how you maybe can make more money out of it, either by taxation or by connecting new industries from other realms, by either being friend to them and trading with them, or conquering them, and therefore integrate them directly. And here we can make a stop, and in the next episode we are going to talk a bit more about autonomy and what is causing autonomy, how you can manage it, and how it is connected to distances from your capital.